Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Inside ODOT podcast. My name is Matt Noble, and I will be your host for this 14th episode of the podcast. In this episode, we have two segments for your listening pleasure. The first one, you'll hear from Terra Lingley, who is an ODOT staff person, and she is going to tell us all about the new Mitchell Point Tunnel project that was just finished in the Columbia River Gorge. The second longer segment is audio from a webinar recap of the Joint Committee on Transportation Tour that a group of state legislators took over the summer. You'll hear from several ODOT staff about their experiences meeting and talking with those state legislators. So, let's get started. The first segment in this episode is audio from actually a different podcast series. It's called Making the Mitchell Point Tunnel, and it's a series of interviews with different people from ODOT and private companies and state and local partners who all had a hand in making the Mitchell Point Tunnel. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what the tunnel is, you're in luck, because this segment we talked to Terra Lingley, who is ODOT's Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area Coordinator. Basically, Terra is our agency expert on all things historic Columbia River Highway and the State Trail and the Mitchell Point Tunnel. So in this segment, you'll hear her give an excellent overview of not only the tunnel project and why it's so unique and cool, but also more historical context about the highway itself and the subsequent State Trail, and our future plans for the State Trail through the Columbia River Gorge. It's a very interesting conversation, and you'll hear my voice again as I fill in the gaps, because I'm also the one that helped interview Terra. But we hope you enjoyed Terra's overview of the Mitchell Point Tunnel project.
My name is Terra Lingley. I'm the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area Coordinator for ODOT. I am the program manager for the historic Columbia River Highway State Trail. So I am responsible for applying for grants, working on the National Scenic Area Land Use Permit, as well as guiding and working with our construction partners during construction. The historic highway is an absolute gem that's located in the Columbia River Gorge. It was a scenic highway, one of the first in America to be developed between 1913 and 1922. They planned, engineered, developed, and built this Columbia River Highway. And it was meant to bring folks from Portland out all the way to the Dalles. And it was meant as a touring route to bring the city dwellers out into nature and to experience the beauty and the grandeur that is the Columbia River Gorge. The Historic Highway State Trail is both a federally and state mandated activity mandated to the Oregon Department of Transportation to preserve, restore, and reconnect the historic Columbia River Highway as a pedestrian and bicycle recreational trail. So there are segments of the historic highway that are still drivable. You can take your car on it like the Model Ts 100 years ago. But the sections that were disconnected when I-84 went in, we are now restoring as exclusive bicycle and pedestrian facilities. So it's a 12-foot wide paved ADA compliant path that follows as much as we can the original alignment of the historic highway, but it's how the gorge is meant to be seen from about 5 to 10 miles an hour from the seat of bicycle under the power of your own two legs to really take in the beauty of the historic highway and the Columbia River.
So now that we have a handle on the historic highway and the State Trail, that brings us to the star of our show, the Mitchell Point Tunnel, which is located on the Oregon side of the Columbia River, about 6 miles west of the town of Hood River. The story of the tunnel actually begins way back in 1915, but I'll let Terra fill in those details for us.
So the original Mitchell Point Tunnel was truly an engineering marvel. There were 2 viaducts, which are bridges over land, heading into this tunnel to get around this huge barrier, which is Mitchell Point, to connect the historic highway on either end. And the designers wanted to be able to have people be able to see and bring fresh air into the tunnel. So they have these iconic 5 arches. And pretty much you Google the historic Columbia River Highway, a photo of Mitchell Point is the first thing that will show up. It was iconic. It was beautiful. The arched windows in the tunnel itself really framed a picture of the landforms across the river, as well as looking up and down the river. So it's a really special place, and it's one I've heard other folks say, everyone always asks them when they come to the Columbia River Gorge, where is that tunnel? I want to see that tunnel, because it was so well known, it was so beautiful. So we're really excited to recreate that and have a solution that harkens back to the original historic highway as part of our state trail. Like many things in history, you don't really understand what you have until you've destroyed it or it has gone away. And so when ODOT was building the water level route, which is now Interstate 84 along the railroad, there just wasn't enough room between the railroad and Mitchell Point to be able to have a 4-lane highway. And so unfortunately, they blasted back the rock face, and in the process of that, they destroyed the tunnel.
The Mitchell Point Tunnel is one piece of a larger trail system known as the historic Columbia River Highway State Trail. The tunnel is the latest piece in a trail puzzle that ODOT and many other partners have been assembling for decades. The shared vision is reconnecting all 73 miles of the original historic highway through the gorge, including an exclusive, car-free segment for people walking, rolling, and biking. The good news is we're so close to realizing that vision, but as Terra outlines, there is still more work to be done.
In 1986, when the National Scenic Act was signed into law for the Columbia River Gorge, we had about 22 miles that were disconnected from the historic highway. As of 2024, when the Mitchell Point Tunnel opens, we'll have around 2 miles left to connect of the state trail. From Mitchell Point Tunnel east into Hood River is the biggest chunk to reconnect and complete as part of the state trail. When ODOT and project partners are finished restoring and reconnecting the historic highway, you will have a way to travel from the eastern edge of the Portland metro area all the way to the Dalles, which is past the mountains in eastern Oregon. This connection provides a way to move off of Interstate 84. For 22 miles, there's an exclusive bicycle and pedestrian connection, so it really enhances the safety of the users between those two locations. And for the segments that are shared with vehicles, it's a much lower speed, lower volume facility. And so, we're really looking to enhance the ability for non-motorized users to get from Portland to the eastern side of the Cascades.
The Columbia Gorge is a popular tourism destination with over 2 million visitors per year flocking to famous sites like Multnomah Falls. Not only is the State Trail a popular car-free recreational destination, it's also an important connection for people who live and work in the Gorge's communities.
The State Trail truly is an international wonder. We anticipate folks coming from all around the world to recreate on the historic highway State Trail to see the gorge as it was meant to be seen at that slower pace, taking advantage of the beauty spots along the way, the waterfalls, the lookouts, etc. For the communities in the gorge, we have heard that it's been used as a commuter route. So it's a way to choose to travel in the gorge that doesn't require the use of a private vehicle. And when all is said and done, we're working with our transit providers, so you'll be able to take a bus from trailhead to trailhead, and so walk or bike as much as you want or as little as you want in the gorge.
Reconnecting the historic Columbia River Highway has been a group effort.
This project would not be possible without a myriad of partners. We have the United States Forest Service, we have Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, we have Travel Oregon, we have Western Federal Lands Highway Division, as well as the Friends of the Historic Columbia River Highway and Friends of the Columbia River Gorge, all working together to realize this vision of a reconnected 72 miles of the historic Columbia River Highway.
So we spoke to Terra in summer of 2024, a few months before the tunnel was due to open. And as you probably noticed, her excitement for the tunnel opening was pretty palpable. So, as our final question to Terra, and to wrap up this segment, we asked her simply, what are you looking forward to most when the tunnel finally opens?
The new Mitchell Point Tunnel, when it opens, those views haven't been seen in 70 years since the original tunnel was no longer being used. And so to be able to stand in the modern Mitchell Point Tunnel at one of those windows looking out across the Columbia River, that is going to be amazing. We're reaching back through the past to reconnect the users to that original experience. And we have a historic photo of a bike leaning up against the railing of the original Mitchell Point Tunnel. So I'm very excited to recreate that, lean my bike up against the railing and take that photo, because we really are recreating that feeling and that design aesthetic and that connection through the gorge that was originally created 100 years ago.
The second longer segment for this episode features audio from a webinar that we recorded in November of 2024, recapping the statewide Joint Committee on Transportation Tour. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what that tour was, it was a 12-stop tour that the Joint Committee members took all over the state. And at each stop, they talked to ODOT staff and community members to really get a sense of what the local transportation scene was like. How do they use it? What are their needs? What are their priorities? What are their challenges? And the Joint Committee members will then take all that information back with them to their legislative session in 2025 to help them hopefully craft a transportation funding package during that session. But the point of this webinar was we brought in ODOT staff from across the state who participated in those conversations with those state legislators. And we asked them, like, what was it like? What'd you guys talk about? Like, was it scary? Was it fun? What was your experience? So you'll hear from 5 different people in this webinar that we edited down for you. You'll hear from Lindsay Baker. She's the Assistant Director for Government and External Relations. Carla Phelps is the Commerce and Compliance Division Administrator. Dave McKay is the DMV Field Services Manager. Jeremiah Griffin is the District 8 Manager in Region 3. And finally, Ryan Hoeft is the Albany Maintenance Manager out of District 4.
My name is Lindsay Baker. I have the great honor of serving as ODOT's Assistant Director for Government and External Relations. We have been joining the Joint Committee on Transportation, which is a bipartisan bicameral group of the Oregon legislature, as they have embarked on a 12-stop tour across the state. They stopped at 12 communities to really develop that deeper understanding of those structural challenges, to really hear from Oregonians directly, not just from the agency, not just from their colleagues in the legislature, but hear from communities across the state about what their transportation needs and what their transportation priorities are. And then really this tour gave us an opportunity to, I think, dive a little bit deeper and talk about what our priorities are around having that sufficient, sustainable funding so that we can deliver that safe, accessible, and reliable system for the state. So we worked really closely with local partners. So whether that was the county, maybe the Public Works Department, the local city, the local transit provider, to really plan each of these bus tours and really be focused and really targeted on what is the theme of this day. What are we trying to help legislators understand at a more deeper level? What are we trying to sort of relate in terms of how our structural funding challenges impact or support our ability to provide that ongoing maintenance and operations? So we work closely with local partners to really plan these tours, make sure that they felt like a very seamless and integrated and aligned representation of what transportation looks like and feels like in each of these individual communities across the state. I certainly, and I think our team really viewed this tour as an opportunity to continue to build that understanding and have folks internalize what those structural funding challenges are, build the trust and the confidence in our agency that we are able to deliver, able to be good stewards of resources, that we have a really big job ahead of us, certainly, but that we are eager and willing to rise to that occasion, but that our performance and our ability to actually deliver on those things is dependent upon having a level of resourcing and a level of funding that can actually support those services on a day-to-day. We've got a few folks here that all had some role in putting this tour on over the summer, and they will share with you kind of from their perspective what it looked like on the ground and really what they took away and maybe what their teams also took away from being able to join the legislature on this tour over the summer. So with that, I will transition it. And I think Jeremiah is up first to talk a little bit about what your experience was like when the legislature came to town in Medford.
Okay, well, thank you. My name is Jeremiah Griffin, the District 8 Manager. out of the Medford, the Jackson-Josephine County area. And I will start by saying I was pretty nervous when I heard that the district managers were going to be very involved in the tours, but it's not what you would think. The nervousness of being in front of a bunch of legislators or the public speaking aspect, it was more of suddenly realizing the importance of how my small piece and our small piece in the tour, that role that I played, I'm representing multiple folks. And so I was nervous about that. And I was nervous that I was going to mess up because in my mind, the whole budget challenge, the funding challenge is on me. I have to get it right. I did take it that serious, but I'm not alone. And we're one of 12 spots, one of 12 locations. And there was a ton of work behind the scenes in helping us prepare for the tour. We really focused in the Medford area, and we had 100-degree temperatures and smoke in the valley. And with that, we reminded folks, hey, we're also talking about winter. You're seeing the summer tour, but there's something we can't necessarily highlight in person. It's that winter challenge. So we were able to bring one of 3 push trucks in District 8. I don't think any other areas around the state have them. Those are critical tools for us that we could share a little bit of a story on the Siskiyou Pass. Talked a lot about just winter maintenances and challenges that we face across the agency. This specific tool that we have drew a lot of interest. We did a presentation at the beginning, and there was a lot of questions about it, some good photos in front of it as well. But we were able to pull a lot of data and information around how many trucks do you push in the winter? About 2,500 trucks. Without those 3 trucks that we have, that would be somewhere around 2,500, maybe 5,000 hours of delay that we would have. Well, that number was a pretty big number, and we shared the cost of the impacts of delays on the interstate. A 24-hour closure, for example, on the Siskiyou Pass in that specific area costs somewhere between $900,000 and $1 million for a 24-hour closure, the impact of that delay. So these numbers we're trying to share hit home more than I thought they would, to be honest with you, because they referenced them later in the presentations. And in the roundtable, folks from Portland were talking about the importance of understanding the whole state, not just their area. There were legislators referencing things from outside the area I'm in. And that meant a lot to me because it meant they were listening. I would say we highlighted a lot of the important work we do, but in the same time, our job and our task was to share the challenges of what it would be like without the staffing and the things that we need. And so we really, really focused on the challenges, not only the important work that we do, but what are the challenges moving forward. So we talked through incident response and evacuations, and specifically the Alameda fire in the Medford, Phoenix, Ashland, Talent area, where we lost almost 3,000 structures. 3 people lost their lives in the fire. And we were heavily and very involved in the evacuations of that fire. All the while, we had 4 other wildfires going on. And just in our district, I mean, there were fires all over the state. But in ours, we had 68 people that were assigned to that came from all over our region. And so I was able to share it. We played this critical role, but we also, if we don't have the staff to help, we're going to have a major impact, not only in our community, but also on our emergency response partners, fire, EMS, law enforcement, and so on. And so they really dug in and listened, and I was impressed by that. Talked a lot about climate impacts, and for us, that was vegetation management, some social impacts around litter, graffiti, illegal camping, things like that. The financial aspects of not only that, but also incident response. We actually had a large truck crash that they all drove through the morning of our tour. And so they saw firsthand a pretty significant crash that impacted guardrail, and I think it was about a 80 or 100-gallon diesel spill. I mean, so there was quite a bit that went into it, a big cleanup, and they all saw that. So I was able to share real-world example that they saw, the impacts, and the fact that our staff was working not only the day before, but that night to help with that. Again, they were listening. And so just for my piece, the takeaways, I was really impressed at the questions they were asking. They asked a specific question about how many trucks do you use to plow on the south side of the Siskiyou Summit? I mean, so they got really into the weeds of our operations. For us, there's a lot of preparation. And again, I was in 1 tour out of the 12, so I can't imagine the work that you guys all did. For those that were involved in all 12, just that preparation and that work was absolutely worth it. And I think the questions and the continued conversations where they're referencing stuff from just this tour and maybe others, it really gave me hope that they're trying to work super hard for us as we move forward and as they move forward into the legislative session. So for me, I appreciate that, and I was glad to be a part of it. And for now, I would like to go ahead and hand it over to Ryan, and so he can share some of the great work they did in Albany.
Thank you, Jeremiah. I'm Ryan Hoeft. I'm the manager for Albany Maintenance and District 4 Incident Response. As Lindsay mentioned, on July 16th, the JCT tour landed in Albany. The day consisted of a bus tour, a stop at the Albany Maintenance Yard, that roundtable discussion, and a public hearing to conclude. During the Albany bus tour, the representatives were very engaged in conversation and grasping for a better understanding on topics such as sweeping constraints, sidewalk repairs, vegetation control, and safety-sensitive projects. District 4 Manager Brian Morey received a question on what partnerships look like between ODOT and other agencies. Brian took the opportunity to explain how we share resources and communicate around winter ops, traffic management, and day-to-day tasks. This Q&A led perfectly into the 5 short presentations from ODOT, Lynn County, and the City of Albany that we had lined up for the visit at the Albany Yard. And as a group, we touched on traffic volumes, incident numbers, abandoned motorhomes, slides and sinks, cost materials, and how we rely on tired and aging equipment every day to provide our services to Oregonians. I brought to light how the Albany Yard depends on one 20-plus-year-old loader to load salt and sand during winter storm events, and how all 3 Valley crews in District 4 partially rely on a 1989, 91, and a 2001 mag truck. We also found a moment to make the room smile by explaining how my district manager took his CDL driving test in the 1985 5-yard truck that the group could see parked outside, a truck that we still use today. This eventually led to a photo op moment where Director Strickler helped the representative's daughter into the driver's seat of the truck. As the representatives made their way back to the bus, I received multiple questions pertaining to the differences in equipment and what we use certain equipment for. As I worked my way through these questions, I realized my key takeaway from the tour: the opportunity to educate the group on what we do it with, and truly show a glimpse into our world. John Bernard, the coastal manager in District 4, was approached about the high expectations placed on our agency from the traveling public. And the expectations are high. And that's a testament to the top-notch service our agency and employees provide. And it's a level of service that we all strive to continue to deliver to the state that we all love. I believe our Albany tour and the other tours around the state have been how essential a funding package truly is. So thank you. And with that, I will now pass the torch to Dave McKay with the DMV.
Thanks, Ryan. So DMV participated at 8 public hearings with Director Strickler and the ODOT region manager. And during those presentations, there wasn't much we could share in just a 1-minute slide, but the opportunity to highlight our challenges matters beyond just that 1 minute. I really appreciated that the legislators heard the same thing repeatedly with a change or two here and there. And in addition to the public presentations, DMV had 4 office visits in downtown Portland, Coos Bay, Hermiston, and Hillsborough. These were opportunities to go into more detail on our challenges in a less formal environment and have some back and forth with the legislators and others. While everyone's been to their local DMV office, this gave legislators a chance to see the diversity of offices around the state. Interactions with the legislators were 100% positive, 100% productive. They were genuinely interested in understanding the work and the challenges and in finding solutions. So questions from legislators about DMV were mostly around our talking points of staffing, facilities, and safety. All of their questions were fair, productive, and supportive. There were even questions along the way that were clearly meant to help drive home our talking points. My favorite question was from Senator Finley at the Coos Bay stop. This was a day or two after he had visited his local DMV in Ontario and was helped by a DMV employee on what happened to be her last day before taking a remote, higher-paying job. His question was, how can DMV compete for frontline employees with other agencies or businesses who can offer higher salaries and remote work opportunities? So he really helped us kind of drive that point home just with that question. Another question clearly acknowledged the compounding challenges brought by the passing of legislation. From Senator Boquist at the Hermiston stop, he asked, "You talk about the complexity of the work the employees must do, and that obviously comes from the legislation we keep passing. What can we do to help simplify that work?" And then some key takeaways from the experience. I was impressed by the committee's commitment to these tours. I really anticipated a drop-off in their interest and presence over the course of the summer, but they were consistently there and they were consistently engaged. It was also a great education for me on the breadth of the work that ODOT performs. ODOT has obligations to Oregonians in every corner of the state on diverse issues that were previously unknown to me. But all those issues are intimately important to individual Oregonians. Many are literally life and death, and those that aren't still feel life and death to someone. It's clear that each citizen who provided comment at the public hearings is passionate, profoundly impacted, and often desperate about the issue that they're commenting on. Sometimes that's financially motivated, but just as often it's a safety, a health, or a well-being motivated issue. At the Hermiston public hearing, there was a very elderly woman who provided comment. I really can't overstate just how elderly she was and the effort that must have gone into getting her there that night. I spoke with her afterward and she said, "I don't know if what I said did any good, but it was too important not to try." I thought I knew this already, but what we do at ODOT really matters, even more to individual Oregonians than I previously understood. I believe the committee and the public understand the need to fund transportation. The tours were essential to highlighting that already known fact, and I'm optimistic they'll go a long way in results next session. DMV being included in the tours, both at the hearings and at the site visits, means a lot to our staff. Seeing legislators come into our offices accompanied by the director and assistant directors like Lindsay and others goes a long way in knowing that DMV employees and DMV challenges are being considered. And while final outcomes are out of our control, the genuine inclusion and consideration in these tours really did mean so much. So I'll now turn it over to Carla Phelps from CCD.
Good afternoon. Thanks, David. Number one takeaway right off the bat was just how great ODOT employees are. It was so fun to go travel across the state and just see the consistency of passion and pride in the work from the frontline staff to the region managers to government relations. It was just a really great experience. So the tour was an opportunity for CCD to share information with our legislators and key local officials as to the work we do at Commerce and Compliance. Everyone who uses the system shares the road with commercial vehicles, but there's few who understand what it takes to regulate this industry. And this opportunity really gave CCD the chance to speak to how our work helps maintain a safe transportation system. Each of the 3 testimony opportunities that we participated in provided that opportunity to directly discuss our specific needs in 3 different ways. So at the first testimony down in Medford, we focused on the overall work CC does and the impact we have on the protection of the system. We discussed the technical debt and the challenges of our IT systems, as well as the limitations of our scale facilities to mitigate traffic into our facilities safely and timely. We also focused on road size and weight and safety regulatory work that we do, providing data on violations, way operations, connection to federal safety regulations, crash data, and the key role that our work plays into protecting the infrastructure from unsafe carriers and unsafe loads. Our last testimony gave us an opportunity to talk about the more than 100,000 carriers we serve from Canada to Mexico and the revenue we collect through registration and late mile tax collection. We were able to show off a couple small facilities in different locations. Then we also stopped at Farewell Bend and showed off our port of entry and truck inspection bay. This was a fun stop. The group seemed to really enjoy it. They got to watch a truck inspection, ask questions, and some of them even put on the bump caps and headed under the truck to see exactly what we look for on a commercial vehicle. Like David, we all each had interesting questions. One just random question was, how big are garage doors on the truck inspection bay, right? So they're trying to figure out legal size, dimensions, and whatnot, and it really helped generate a conversation that was terrific. So fun event at Farewell Bend. The staff there did a phenomenal job presenting, and I thank them for that. Interactions with the officials were really positive in all the settings with a genuine interest in understanding the issues facing ODOT. They wanted to hear from all who worked on and those who use the system as to what they see as challenges. And the approach of the committee was certainly we are all in this together, hoping that people not only came with issues that they saw, but potential solutions as well. And again, it's been mentioned before, the passion from the communities across Oregon was really impressive. And everybody came there to testify and express their needs and concerns as to what they see as transportation needs in their community. And really in full support that, yes, we need a funding package. They want to see their tax dollars used in a meaningful manner while understanding that the needs may be slightly different in their own area from their neighbors across the state and definitely at a different scale. But they did understand that the funding is important. Final takeaway, we really armed the committee and the local authorities with some valuable information. We were able to show off the work we do as a whole with ODOT, and we gave them a lot of information to think about that they are now utilizing in their joint committee workshops to find the right path for funding. So great opportunity, and I appreciate the fact that I got to participate.
And now I'm going to turn it back over to Lindsay.
Thanks, Carla. So thank you to Jeremiah, Ryan, Dave, and Carla for sharing your perspective. Can't say how much I appreciate each of you and your teams being willing to put the time and effort and energy into it that you did. I will say unequivocally what I heard as feedback and follow-up from every single tour stop, and then from the wrap-up after all the 12 tours were done, was just a really deep and very, very sincere appreciation to our agency for the work that we do. And that includes every single one of you who are on the call right now. And I think a recognition of how important and critical that work is to the state. And I think also an acknowledgement of how much legislators learned from actually seeing what that really means at a deeper and really, I think, personal and specific level. I think really resonate with a lot of members of the legislature in a way that I think will help them be really successful in making the pretty hard decisions that are coming up ahead. The commitment you certainly have for me from our agency's leadership team is really to continue to share as much as we can about how this conversation is progressing and how this work is ongoing, especially into the 2025 session. Thank you for being here today and for engaging in this conversation and for the work that you continue to do on behalf of the agency and on behalf of state government for Oregonians. It is really noticed and really appreciated. The number of times that I get shout outs for individual employees of Cynthia was great today, or Andy was excellent, or Jeremiah just did such a great job is really encouraging and makes me really proud to work here and to be part of this team.
All right, that is a wrap for episode 14 of the Inside ODOT podcast. As always, thank you for listening. We really appreciate you taking the time to check out the show today. And if you have any thoughts or comments or questions, please email the Inside ODOT mailbox. That'll reach us here at the podcast. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you here next time.